RJ Zimmerman. So glad to have you here today. Take a second and introduce yourself and tell us what you got going on over there on your side besides unicorns and jetpacks. I know you said it wasn't a jetpack. That's what it looks like.
Well, I appreciate you having me, Savannah, and it's a lot of fun. A lot of fun way to introduce this. So it's a proton pack from Ghostbusters, and I like to tell people that I'm here to bust the ghosts of your drinking past, so we can get to the rainbow and unicorn future. And I'm here to have some fun, but I'm an alcohol-free life coach certified by This Naked Mind. I actually work with This Naked Mind in some of their groups for people who are looking to change their relationship with alcohol. I have not drank in over 10 years. I'm a dad of two, used to be a high voltage line tech. So I used to work on the high voltage utility lines that, power people's homes. And I have a podcast called The Untapped Keg that's about sobriety and mental health that I've had for about 4 years now. And really, it is the engine that has powered my self discovery journey and the way that I've been able to uh, have what the outlook on life that I have right now, and how I can provide some guidance for people that maybe are kind of stuck with where they're at in life and are looking for a place to move forward, or they just don't necessarily know how they can really change that mindset and the perspective that they're approaching life, and are just looking for something uh, to change in a way that they can not have to make massive changes in their life, but really just what are you focusing on? What are you aware of in your life? And how can you make it a little bit more useful than necessarily that self-critic that tends to be the loudest in our minds?
Yeah, and that critic is usually the one of the reasons we end up drinking in the first place. And the self-discovery, alcohol does so much that is hard sober. So there's a trap that we fall into, and it feels great until it doesn't, because it is a downer. Everybody says that. And I'm like, no, I feel great. I'm like, yeah, you do at the moment. Side note that has nothing to do with anything, but I had to tell you because I don't know, alignment or synchronicity or whatever. It's funny that you used to be a lineman because we almost had to cancel this podcast because we had a storm come through this morning and knocked the power out for like 3 hours.
And I would have been out there fixing it, like that was my job. That is, it's still something that I'm a little bit passionate about. So it's funny. It is really funny that that happened. And it's a profession that people don't think about until the power's out. And it's like, well, when are they going to come fix it? Or, sometimes when that electric bill's due, but generally you're not thinking about the people who keep the lights on. You're just like, why do I keep getting this bill?
I think about it a lot. I have heavily considered becoming an electrician just for being able to study energy work more deeply.
That is, wow. That is really interesting. And the fact that you say that, the is I never looked at it from that perspective. So you just opened my mind completely. And it's interesting because I actually had a conversation with a friend earlier this week, and we were talking about just some of the stuff that kind of happens as you work with electricity, and you see some really cool things, but you also see some stuff that is like, scary, bone chilling, and you hear about it and you have a deeper understanding of it. And the thing is, every single time electricity goes through something it's not supposed to, it doesn't do what you expect it to do. And so opening yourself up to like the surprises that could happen, and then just being respectful of what's around, because you don't know what's going to happen. So you don't know what the consequences necessarily are going to be. They're going to be not awesome, right? But it's one of those things, like if you direct allow it to go where it's not intended, the consequences are going to be it's going to be different every time, and it's not going to be something that you enjoy. It's going to be, pretty high. And this can look like, if it goes through a human, you don't know exactly where the high resistance places are, and electricity goes through it travels through the path of least resistance. It's like water. And so that the way that it goes through the body is going to be different for every single person. And it's the same way, depending on how a piece of equipment is or things like that. So understanding that, you can really start to be conscious of how your energy is really moving through you, and making sure that um and that, I was talking high voltage, but if you take this to yourself and your personal level, be conscious of where your energy is going and put it where you want to put it, so that the unintended consequences aren't necessarily there.
Sure. Everything is energy and everything is untapped potential energy. And just the fact that, because we think of electricity as being separate from, but it's not. It's just the raw version of. And since it travel, you don't know what it's going to do. You can try to kind of direct it usually, but even then, it sometimes has a mind of its own. The correlations we could make there between just life in every aspect can go on for ages, which is why I'm interested in it in the
Really
first
good.
place.
And it's so interesting when you break it down that way, and how you're right. Like electricity, it's amazing because you look up at the lines, there's electricity in there, but you can't see it. And so you want to talk about, one of the ultimate definitions of the woo woo, which, is that energy that is you're harnessing and you're using. And that's really what, your awareness, this entire existence is. So looking up there and knowing that there's electricity traveling, okay, that's great. But again, you can't see it. You can apply that to this work and the self discovery. And you don't, depending on how deep you want to get with it, just the metaphors that you can use, like you're saying, it's a lot of fun. It's really cool.
Complete side note that still has nothing to do with anything that we're supposed to be talking about today. Uh, Sometimes you can hear it. Like I've noticed we go kayaking a lot, and when the power lines are over the water, you can hear the buzzing sound. But when you're just like walking down the road, going for a walk with your dog, you don't hear it.
Yep. So it depends on the voltage that is going through it. So if it's a higher voltage, you'll be able to hear the vibrations a little bit more. And then depending on how much humidity is in the air. So on a foggy day, you can hear it more than you can on a clear day, because there's more path for the sound, the vibrations to really travel. And so that's why, sometimes you can hear it more, and in other areas, you can hear it more than you can in other places.
Okay, circling back to our actual topic now. Uh, the self-discovery thing I liked a lot that I was looking around your website and you talk a lot about that. I talk a lot about that too because it's something that every one of us wants. It's the thing that causes us the most turmoil, even if we don't realize that it's the thing that causes the most turmoil. Because if you're living your fully authentically you expression, then unapologetically, then you're happy and you're at peace and you're thankful for everything you have and just everything's going swell and good. And a lot of us don't realize that stepping into that authenticity is what's going to fix all of our problems. And then even when we do, it's like, well, I mean, like, where do we even start?
And that's the question that I was really faced with, where I was living life when I was drinking. It was trying to show up and be accepted, right? And so I didn't know this at the time, but Brene Brown talks about the difference between fitting in and belonging. And fitting in is when you're around a group of people and you think you have to act a certain way in order to be accepted. Belonging is when you're just yourself and you're just accepted by that group of people. And I think that exactly what you're talking about is what we're all searching for, but we don't realize it. And along with that, that connection that happens when you are in a place of belonging, when you're in a place of actually being accepted for being yourself, you can feel that connection. Whereas when you're trying to fit in, you're disconnecting yourself from that group. So even when they accept you, you don't feel that acceptance because you're not actually connecting with them. And to take it deeper, again, based on, how we've gone with that, I like to say that's also part of that self disconnection. And so when you're changing yourself and you're trying to fit in, you're not just disconnecting from the other people, you're disconnecting from yourself. And when you do that for a lot of your life, and I got diagnosed with ADHD at 33, understanding masking and how that presents, like I'd always been trying to fit in my entire life. So I never felt accepted. I never felt that connection
Mhm.
until I just started to find who I was and not change who RJ is depending on where he's showing up. So I had, the RJ at work, I had the RJ as a husband, the RJ as a dad, RJ out with the guys. And this happened even after I quit drinking. Um, I was faced with a decision. Do I want to start a family and start a career, or do I want to continue to have alcohol in my life? And it wasn't that I had that massive rock bottom moment, but I knew I was headed in that direction and my life was not going anywhere. And so I just, made that decision that, okay, alcohol can't be a part of my life. I want to start a family. I want to start a career. And that's what led me to being a high voltage line tech. But the self discovery that came after my wife came to me and asked for a divorce, that was the moment where I had that same two choices that came up. I was looking in the mirror, still had that same disconnection with myself, and seeing the void that I saw the 6 years prior when I was making the decision to continue drinking or not. And it led me to, okay, you can either continue where you're going and just get divorced and stay pretty miserable in your life that looks successful externally, has a lot of people around you, but just doesn't feel fulfilling. Or you can figure out what it is you're looking for from life and really pursue that. And I decided trying to figure out what the hell it was I was looking for from life and figure out what that void is in the mirror that is still there. And after 6 years of not drinking, it's supposed to solve all of my problems,
Mhm.
the not drinking, because that was the cause of everything.
Mhm.
Um, and that's what led me to get diagnosed with ADHD, led me to therapy, to start the podcast, right? Which is called Untapped Keg. And that's really what it was like tapping into myself. And yeah, I'm not tapping into the keg anymore, but I also didn't tap into myself. I didn't tap into those underlying reasons for why I drank, the underlying reasons for why I was changing who I was based on the circumstances, the people around me, what I people wanted to hear,
Mhm.
um, because I didn't really fully accept who I was and
Mhm.
how they were going to possibly react to me. And I was putting a lot of my focus on people who didn't accept me because I felt that I had to earn that.
Mhm.
And that was a harsh reality check when I finally came to terms with that. So starting the podcast and talking with people who had found answers to themselves, and then I was able to take those and be like, that sounds a lot like me at the beginning. I wonder if what they're using would work for me, if I can find a way to be able to relate that to my own life and maybe see what works. And then I would take what did and just leave what didn't where it was. And it sped this self-discovery journey up that I was on. And it was like rocket fuel. And I started to actually find things out about myself, find things out about life, and stop pretending to be somebody that I really wasn't. Um, and the thing was, like, I still ended up getting divorced, moved across the country, from Wisconsin to Virginia, and really starting a whole new life. And the reason that I did that again was for family, because I wanted a better culture to raise my kids in. My ex-wife and I both did. And so that's why we moved. And I just realized that the people I was surrounding myself with were those same kind of disconnected relationships. And I shifted that to, okay, what kind of a person do I want in my life? What, how do I want to show up in my life? And how can I look at it and say, I'm proud of the person that I am. I'm proud of how I'm showing up every single day. And I'm not really changing who I am, whether it be, RJ working, RJ the dad, RJ the friend, RJ, the partner. And there are certain things that I don't carry through to all of those, but the values, the person who's there, the core is the same throughout. And so that connection that I was able to build with myself, it it just allows me to not be so worried about how people view me. That doesn't mean that sometimes, right, that doesn't break through, but ultimately it's I'm going to show up as my best self, as the best version of me that I can. And if somebody doesn't want to interact or be around that, okay, that's fine. It makes sense to me. And just kind of move on and realize that that's a good thing and not necessarily saying anything about who I am or how I'm showing up.
Yeah. Um, Masking is, I'd venture to say that it's not just a neurodivergent thing anymore, that it's become popularized or normalized via the neurodivergent community, which I am also a part of. But I think that society and just in general in our culture is constantly trying to direct us, in line with it starts when we're little, it starts in the school system, it starts within our
Yes.
families. And I've dissected it as far as I can dissect it. And it's innate and natural for not only like yeah, I think the government and the people who are in charge are kind of like directing us the way they want to, for sure. Every culture, every government is doing that with their own people. But it's easy for them to do because our friends and family members have the innate, what's the word? Drive, inner programming that's just built into our DNA to direct their loved ones in a more agreeable manner so that the village will like them, so that the village won't kick them out because historically we needed the village to survive. If the village didn't like us, we were more or less dead. So remembering that has helped me a lot because I think that's a big thing. It's definitely what got me with alcohol is that when you drink, the mask falls off. And then you learn a little bit about who you are, and everybody around you learns a little bit about who you are. And that can be all of your traumas and your demons coming out for show and being on display for everybody. Or it can be like, oh, like with me, it's my mask fell off, and suddenly, because I was riddled with anxiety, couldn't breathe when I was around people, much less talk or move.
Mhm.
I lost all range of motion in my neck and shoulders because I was just so stiff because I was terrified somebody might look at me because it wasn't safe for people to look at me. It wasn't safe for people to know I exist. And then when I drank, for the first time ever in my entire life, I wasn't anxious. I wasn't stressed out. I wasn't worried about what people think or whatever. I was just relaxed and happy and myself. So I had to really figure out how to bring the aspects of me when I was drinking into being me when I was sober as well. And at first that was a huge shock for people in my life. Like it'd be 9 o'clock in the morning, 10 o'clock in the morning, and I'm like bouncy. And because again, neurodivergency, we tend to be a little bit more on the hyper end of the things. And so I was, for the first time in my life, showing people this side of me, and they would be like, Savannah, have you been drinking? It is 9 o'clock in the morning. I'm like, no, man. What's in that cup, Savannah? It's water, dude. But yeah, relationships they are the most valuable thing to us across the board. Nothing's going to fulfill you more than the relationships in your life. And people get really hung up on the romantic relationships and they become
Yes.
completely blind to the relationships they have with their family, the relationships they have with their community, the relationships they have with food, with electronics, technology, the relationships they have with themselves. But also, nothing else in our lives can be more detrimental to our progress either. So the whole be yourself, and some people will fall away. Some people will be triggered by who you are. Some people will be combative about how you are. Some people will downright tell you that you're a complete and utter jerk just because I mean, like the things that we could throw out examples to the end of the podcast. Um, so that makes it even harder sometimes to figure out who you are because when they start throwing out all these accusations or, suddenly like my personality like it doesn't translate a whole lot through the podcast. People would be surprised. They think they know who I am. They have no idea. I have a very, very, very big personality. Most people can't handle it. So I have to like tone it back a little bit. And for a long time, when I started letting that personality out, for like during the parties was one thing, but then you come into real life on the other side of things, and people are like, hold on, Savannah, back up a little bit. Do we really need all of the rainbow glitter? I'm like, yeah, we do. We do. And people don't like that because most people also are dealing with their own demons and traumas and energy blocks and whatever you want to call them. They're all the same thing. And
Yes.
when you're being loudly, unapologetically yourself, it makes people uncomfortable because they want to be loudly and unapologetically themselves, but it's hard and they don't know how. Like the amount of times I've heard people be like, man, I wish that I just didn't care what people thought like you do. I'm like, man, I used to care a lot about what people, I've only just now, and I've been told this my whole life. Like, I wish that I didn't care what people think the way you don't care what people think, Savannah. I'm like, no, you don't understand. I care a lot. I just can't help it. Like, I can't help but be me underneath, which is why I shut down. I shut everything down. I stopped moving, stopped talking, couldn't breathe because I was too much. I was too much
Mm-hmm.
and I didn't know how to be less. So I don't have dials, I have switches. It's on or it's off.
Ooh, I like that. I like the way that you just phrased that too. And it's funny when people say, I wish that I could. And then, my question to people now is, which I wouldn't ask that before, is, well, what's stopping you?
Yourself
Right?
and the
Yeah.
expectations, the judgments. The
Yeah.
judgments that you're placing, you think others are judging you, but you don't know what's in their head.
Mm-hmm.
What's the truth is that you're judging you through the lens of their eyes, but you don't have a clue what they're thinking.
And even if you are, I like to tell people this too. Judgments are rooted, and I don't like to use always, never, platitudes like that. But this is one where I use it, and I've yet to be debunked, and so I'm going to continue to use it. All judgments are rooted in insecurity,
Yes.
whether that's judgments of other people, judgments of myself, like it's rooted in an insecurity. And so if you can understand that, you can start to understand when you judge people what it is that you might have to look at inside of yourself.
Hmm.
And that can give you a place to be able to start to discover and be honest with yourself about things. And it also allows you to see that when people are judging you, they're not actually judging you, they're judging themselves.
Hmm.
And so they're insecure about that inside of themselves. So whether you dress loud, which is, sometimes I wear bright colors. I didn't for a long time. I dressed in, grays, and I still wear grays and blacks. And I mean, it goes with stuff, but I actually dress kind of how I feel to the inside now, which is, I have pinks, I have oranges, I have vibrant blues and stuff like that. And I'll wear that. And people will compliment me on it. And some people look at me like, uh, I would want to wear stuff like that. It's like, okay, but why aren't you? Well, because I don't want to be judged by other people. Well, okay, but why do you think you're going to be judged that way? And just all of a sudden, you can start to see that these things that I held against myself or the things that I held against other people were really me being upset that I wasn't giving myself that permission, or me thinking that I would be held to a standard that they're not held to. And okay, but who's holding me to that standard? And it's like, well, I'm the one holding me to that standard. Okay, what if I didn't hold myself to that standard and I just allowed myself to be human and make some mistakes and understand that you are a mirror to society? Like, especially when you stop drinking. Oh my God. The amount of times that people are going to look at you and just, your friends are going to be like, you don't have a problem. You just stop a little bit. Well, why are they saying that? They're saying that because now you are reflecting their drinking onto themselves. They don't want to handle that. So they want you to come and, drink with them still, even if you don't want to. It doesn't align with yourself. And then when you tell people you don't drink and they start to tell you, oh, I don't drink very much, and they start to get that insecure and, worried that you're going to judge them. And I started to tell people, okay, I didn't ask you about your drinking. I just don't drink. That's all I'm telling you. That's it. Like, you don't have to give me the 30 minutes into how much you drink and how often and why. So I am not asking that. I'm not questioning yours. And so when you get to that mindset that you're talking about and understanding just how much of a mirror you are for other people, it allows you the space to be yourself, and you don't have to go through the toggle switches of, I need to turn this off right now. I can turn this one on, turn that one. And that's
Exhausting.
that freedom. Yeah, the freedom that comes with that, the lightness. You're not spending energy wondering which switches are on in this situation, which switches are off. And then you accidentally, turn one of them the wrong way. And you're like, oh shit, that one wasn't supposed to be on here. It was this one that was supposed to be on. And you just free so much up to just show up and be yourself. It just, the feeling is incredible. And it's what a lot of people are looking for, and they don't even realize it.
Yeah, it's complete liberation.
Yes, it is. That is, yes. And you give other people permission, whether you know it or not, to be themselves. And you realize that when you stop judging other people and judging yourself, other people will stop judging themselves and probably stop judging other people too, because they see the same things that you do.
Well, they'll lessen their judging.
True. True. I mean, there is something to throwing judgments sometimes to people, but if you just when it happens, doesn't mean you have to act on it, right? Doesn't
Yeah.
mean you have to vocalize it. You could just, okay, what is it that I'm actually saying here? And when you get honest with yourself, it's like, okay, that is something that I am working on, and they can have permission to do that too.
Mhm. Yeah. And see, and okay, another thing I liked about what you had on your website was how I think we can translate it across the board here is that people think that this whole process is about quitting alcohol or whatever, whatever, that we focus on the thing that we think is the problem. And I teach the opposite as well. You shouldn't be focusing because that's giving energy to it. And then that's just
Mhm.
perpetuating it and making it bigger. The more attention that you give to, say, alcohol, but it can just easily be dieting, food related, or whatever, whatever. The trauma, the trauma that you're trying to heal. It doesn't matter, whatever the thing is that you're trying to get away from in order to XYZ. The more you focus on the problem itself, the bigger it's going to be. And it's as big of an issue as you allow it to be. So the counter to that is just completely putting your blinders up to like the judgment thing, for example. I completely put your blinders up to everything that does not involve what you want and what fulfills your heart and soul. If it makes you happy, if it evokes feelings, emotions of love and peace and happiness and gratitude and yada yada, all of those things, that's where you need to keep your focus 100% of the time. And if you just keep on looking for that and keep on, that's why gratitude is so heavily talked about in this type of community stuff, like, the personal development and spirituality and all of those things that are supposed to help you get over here to this side of things. It's why gratitude's it was so heavily, it was wonderful. Um, because the more you only have X amount of energy, X amount of focus, X amount of attention. We all know it because, tech is constantly pulling at it. And if you focus it, if you intentionally put that energy, attention, focus on what you want, it crowds out the things that you don't want to where they become a non-issue.
Yes. And I think that sometimes when we want this change so badly, that's what we lose sight of is, if you're living your life and you're not drinking, but you're still living your life around going to things without alcohol, if you're still living your life around um, only putting yourself in situations that, alcohol is not present, or making sure that things are set up in a way where alcohol is not going to be a draw on you at all. You're basically looking to make sure that you never have a craving. What are you still living your life around? Alcohol. But you don't want alcohol in your life. So t- letting people know, and this is the same thing that happens like when people are healing the cycles in their life, when they're looking to heal, whether it's past trauma, whether it's just how they're showing up in a relationship, other things that are similar to that, and they avoid triggers. I don't want anything that triggers me. That's because essentially that's what a craving is, right? For alcohol. And the truth is, that's you're still living your life around that thing.
Mhm.
That's not a way to live your life. You're hiding. You're not allowing life to actually be. And so when you want that thing to actually be small in your life, you know, figuring out a way to be able to have that craving and work through it. And then it's not so scary because you already know what to do with it. And what I like to tell people is, the biggest craving that I experienced since I stopped drinking, so in over 10 years, was at 8.5 years that I had stopped, 8.5 years after I stopped drinking. And it was an even more intense craving than it was in my first year. I don't remember a craving as intense as the one that I had at 8.5 years. And I found myself in a hotel room away from my family. I didn't really know anybody. I was at some work training, and I was like, I should go to the bar and get drunk right now. I'm like, what? Where's that coming from? No, I don't want to do that. And then my mind was like, yeah, you could make some bad decisions, and who would know? Who would know?
You would.
And so it's like, what is going on? Like, where is this coming from? And I just had this on repeat. So I went and got some food, and I went back to my hotel room, and I'm like, what is going on that is causing my brain? You should go to the bar right now and just make some bad choices. And I realized after, and it probably took me an hour and a half, 2 hours, and I'd worked through cravings before. So it wasn't my first time, but this one was so intense. I realized it was because I was about to be single for the first time since I had stopped drinking. How do you be single and not drink? And it's like, oh shit. It makes sense of why I would say, let's go to the bar. Let's go make some bad decisions. Because that's what I used to do. That's what I did when I was single before. So I just having that realization just like instantly reduced what the craving was. And I was like, yeah, of course I'm drawn because that's what my brain knows. And then I just sat there and I'm like, okay, what's this going to look like? And I was like, I don't know. It's going to look different, but it's not going to look like me going to the bar and getting drunk because that's just not something that I want to be a part of my life. Well, it's been 8 years or not. It's just, I know it's not. I'm not going to wake up in the morning and say, wow, I really like the way that I showed up. Or I'm not going to meet a person that I'm like, I really am glad that this person is in my life. Like I shouldn't say I'm not going to, but what are the odds that I meet somebody who I'm like, I'm glad that this person is in my life? And the alignment wouldn't be there, right? Just I don't want that scene anymore. And sometimes I go to bars, good food. I go out with friends when they want to go out, but I don't stay as long as I used to. If I'm not having fun, I'm not going to keep myself in that situation. But I'll go out if it's a relationship that I care about, or there's a vibe that I'm kind of looking for and I'm feeling, but I'm not going to recreate what I did when I was drinking because I'm not actually looking for that same feeling. I'm looking for something different, something a little bit new.
Mm.
And when you embrace that, now alcohol or that thing that you're trying to heal, the those triggers, they become a lot smaller.
Mhm.
And it's like when it happens, it's okay, it's there. And you start to, exactly as you said, put your attention on what you want. Okay, I don't want alcohol in my life. Like instead of focusing on the can'ts, I can't have alcohol. And I like to tell people this and they get taken off guard, but who says you can't? Who says you cannot have alcohol? And I've had somebody fight me when I first said this. I'm like, well, who says you can't have it? And they're like, RJ, come on now. Like, are you telling me that that you're telling people who this is really impacting their lives dangerously that they really could have alcohol? And it's like, yes, they could. Honestly, you could. Do you want to? Why are you focusing on the can't? This one thing, this one liquid you you can't have. Why don't we say, I don't want it? What do I want in my life? And now you're, instead of focusing on that one thing, all those possibilities open up.
Mhm.
What what do I want? I don't even know. Okay, let's start with one, two, three things. Let's just start with something that's different and see where that takes you and see where that opens up. And now your creativity is starting to be sparked. Now this energy that you have is, instead of it coming from a place of scarcity, which really just means that fear, that that worry about the unknown, the worry of what, not having something familiar, right? That's really what, when people are talking about that scarcity mindset, that's really what they mean. Instead, it's coming from that place of discovery, that place of, you know there's so many possibilities in imagination, and you can combine different things to make something way different. And I I liken it to your favorite food, right? People ask me my favorite food, and I'm like, well, I don't know if I've tried my favorite food yet. I can tell you what my favorite food is right now, but I'm willing to go out and try, because what if I haven't had my favorite food yet?
Mhm.
What if there's something out there that I haven't discovered? Why am I holding myself back from the
Mhm.
possibility that this is my favorite food forever and always? And so that mindset shift that can happen and allows you to discover, and now you're focusing on what you want instead of those can'ts, and you're focusing on how to make your life as as incredible as possible, and that will get you to a place of really enjoying how you're showing up, enjoying the energy that you're sitting in and you're using, instead of all that heaviness, and that, instead of that scarcity, and instead of um the things that are going to hold you back in the blocks.
Mhm.
You're just going to be like that wonder and that awe, and you can find that joy and that laughter again.
It's the untapped raw potential that we were talking about with the energy earlier. If you're
Absolutely.
channeling it towards this one thing, then you're leaving out all of this other stuff on the other side that we can have, do, be anything we like, but we we really get stuck in our programming. And again, like with the cravings, or I like, okay, so I teach meditation and yoga, and I'm constantly telling my students that your brain, your mind is separate from you. They're two separate things. And your brain and your mind is heavily dependent on the programming and the experiences and the circumstances and the situations that you've had leading up to this point. It doesn't really, it's connected to the body, and the body's always talking to us, and it's trying to communicate, but and I mean, honestly, people are like this too. When you're trying to communicate with one another, we kind of have these feelings and emotions that are pulling us towards one way or another, but we want really badly to define it and use the words that we have available to us in order to communicate this. And sometimes that can leave us way off in left field, not on track at all. So
Mm-hmm.
whereas the cravings you're talking about, your body was trying to tell you that it was concerned about change, and this is why, because it was the things that were opening up, and the only thing it knew, like to communicate that was through cravings. And
Yes.
so that's why I'm like, when we're doing our yoga and our meditation, I'm like, I'm explaining all of this, and I'm like, so if you can, try not to put any words or labels to the feelings that you're having. They're not good or bad, they're just existing. And we'll from there try to see, like, can we pull it over here to better feelings or emotions? And if not, then like if we can, great. You need to practice that all the time. Just try to practice that. And that's not toxic positivity. That's brain training and mind training and all of that. But if you can't, then you need to sit and analyze it and try to figure out why rather than just jumping on whatever train it's telling you is the correct train because it's probably not.
Mm, yes. Well, that's so important, and that's something that yoga and kung fu and meditation has been able to teach me, as well as understand that messages that my body's sending my brain and strengthen that mind body connection, right? And really, this is what led me to understand like what people mean by intuition, right? And really, what if an intuition is understanding the messages your body's sending you, right? And that gut feeling, and just, okay, I know that this feeling is my body saying certain things. I'm gonna follow it. Like, that's what this is. And you'll know the difference between those times where it's throwing up, a marker or a flag, or a, hey, we need to stop and take a look at this because something is bugging me right now. Something's bugging, something about this situation isn't holding true. And so if you could start looking at it from that perspective of the um, hey, I'm going to wave my hands. We just, at some point in the near future, we need to think about this because it's not feeling very good. So maybe you are on the wrong path. Maybe you're putting yourself in situations that you're not going to be able to hold up in. And understanding, exactly what your body's saying, and especially for neurodivergents who tend to have a lot going on in their mind, right? That disconnection between our mind and body is even greater because of that. And sometimes the body has to, the only thing that's going to get through are those really big messages. And that's why being able to take some time to just check in with yourself of throughout the day, just 5 minutes, like, what is it that is happening right now? I've got some tightness. I've got some in my stomach, right? Well, what could that be, right? Is it nerves? Is it that this is unknown? Is it that I'm doing something that's kind of putting my energy into a little bit of chaos? Well, what is going on right now that could be giving me that chaotic energy? Is it the people you're surrounding yourself with? Is it, you know, um, the activity that you're doing that you don't actually like, but because you've been doing it for a long time, you are telling yourself that you like it? Is it that there's just an unknown thing happening right now? And so just proceed with caution
Mhm.
and check in afterwards to see how you're actually feeling. And that's something to do too, where I used to play softball all the time and I was good at it. And so I'm like, I like this because I'm good at it. And it was after like 2 months of me really checking in with myself and checking my energy and um, making sure that I'm putting myself in situations where my energy is fairly peaceful. Like I know where the energy is going and I'm enjoying it. I'm like, I am not having fun. Why? What is going on that like afterwards I'm not enjoying this? And I realized I was doing it just because I was good at it. And it's like, I'm not actually enjoying this. Okay, let's find something else to do. Let's check in somewhere else and see what we can do. And like, that's what led me to um, working out again. It led me to yoga, led me to kung fu, and like these things that helped me to strengthen that connection and my, opening up my worldview and how energy really shows up and stays created, and looking at things through that energetic lens and through that chaotic, that peacefulness, that serenity. It allowed me to understand forgiveness for the first time in my life too, and specifically self-forgiveness. And it's like, okay, what if instead of looking at forgiveness, it's just like, letting people off the hook and forgetting, and that style of forgiveness that you hear from a lot of people, especially from people who know that they've done you harm and don't want to take accountability for it. What if I look at it from a perspective of energy, where if I'm looking at that past and I'm looking at that situation, that person, those things, I'm putting energy there to hold them accountable and giving that thing energy, and myself energy and all of that, when I could take that energy and I could say, yeah, it was not okay to do that, and not give, still hold the accountability and take my own responsibility. But okay, do I want to put my energy in the past and making sure that that's there? Can't take it and move forward. And would that set me up in a place that is way better for my life, for how I show up as a parent,
Mhm.
for me just being able to appreciate things that are happening. And now I can move forward in a way that, again, I look at how I'm showing up and I'm like, yeah, I'm not masking. I'm not lying to myself about this. I'm not putting my energy where it doesn't need to be. And I get to just show up as myself. And that just leaves you with that feeling of serenity that really, when it comes down to it, like that's what people talk about when they say happiness, but they don't realize it's serenity. They think it's excitement. And just understanding those two things, it can be powerful in how it shows up in your life.
Yeah. Let me throw this cat outside real quick with social chill out.
All right,
All right. Sorry about that.
no worries.
Now I can better pay attention. Uh, no, something that came up when you were talking about the softball is, it, man, can we fall into escapism with some sports and physical activity
Yes.
and whatnot. I definitely do avoid things with pickleball these days, but I'm aware of it, so that makes it not an issue. But yeah, coming back to the feelings in the body and whatnot, you really just gotta cut your brain out of it sometimes. And that's why I like to work with the chakra system, because all of these emotions, all of these traumas, all of these whatever, whatever, get stuck in the body somewhere. And checking in with your body and noticing where you feel those emotions is going to direct you towards how to heal them, how to fix them. Do you have to label them and know exactly what they are? No. Does it help? Sometimes. It depends on the person. Some people don't need the labeling and they're just like, okay, they can work with just the energy block that they found in their solar plexus and they can just just run through the physical uh meditation methodology of like you just go inside your body and clear it mentally. Other people, I'm probably one of them, do need it to kind of be at least a little bit directional. And that's why I like the chakra system, because if you're feeling it and if you're like, I've got this, I don't know why I'm being so drawn to the cravings and why it's so hard for me to get past. And I don't know what it's trying to tell me. It's just telling me I want to drink. I don't know what to tell you. And it can be really frustrating, I understand. So if you can go inside of yourself and see where you're feeling the emotions, the tensions, the knots in your muscles when you focus on the craving, then you can, okay, I'm feeling it in my solar plexus. Okay, well, the chakra system says that the solar plexus is related to success and physical energy and your status, your confidence is anything. And this is exactly what this is what my coaching is. We do this process right here, and then I talk them through all of the aspects that say the solar plexus uh, controls whatever, and then little sparks, they're like, oh, there's a thing with my job right now that's doing this or that, and that's been kind of like popping up and bothering me from time to time, but I didn't think it was that big of a deal. And well, and you just kind of dissect it from there.
And that's really where the power of that third party can come in coaching.
Yeah.
And you get stuck at these certain blocks, and okay, I don't know where to go from here.
Mm-hmm.
And okay, you get this, well, let's talk about this. Well, I didn't know I needed to hear that question to move forward. I didn't even think about like that would be important. And just the dots that can be connected by having somebody who just is that neutral third party.
Mm-hmm.
They'll let you know, like, if you need to be challenged, okay, I'm going to challenge you here. If you need to be celebrated, I'm going to celebrate you the heck out of you, especially those small things that you look at and you're like, well, that's not really that big a deal. Yeah, but 3 weeks ago, would you have 6 weeks ago, would you have, celebrated or done that thing? No. Okay, that's huge, right? And it's that progress over perfection that can really help you.
Yes.
And so people having that understanding and reaching out and just being open to somebody like asking you a question instead of just being like, oh, I don't want to answer this. Why are you making me think about it?
Mm-hmm.
Being in a space of, oh, that's a good question. I haven't thought about that one. And just the answers that might come from this one small question. Um, and this, when it comes to like boundaries and setting boundaries with yourself, with other people, asking yourself the question if you're proud about the way that you're showing up right now. Like that one is so powerful for me, and it's so powerful for a lot of my clients because I never asked myself that in this situation. I was always like, well, am I, how are they perceiving me? How, based on other people, instead of asking myself that. And so when you ask yourself if you're showing up, if you're proud of the way you're showing up, if it's a no, okay, what is it that you're not proud of right now? You probably would benefit from setting a boundary around that. And it might not even be, you know, asking this other person to change your behavior. It's you changing your expectations, you changing the way that you are, showing up. And sometimes it's saying no. Just saying no is the boundary you need.
Yeah, that over perfectionism gets us. It
Mm,
really does. We think everything has to be perfect or not at all. And
yes.
no, we are humans, and you really got to be to really successfully do this human thing. You really have to be more laid back and take things less seriously and just be unattached to whatever happens next because it's all an illusion. We can't control what happens next, no matter how hard we try. We don't know the outcomes or how it's going to be. Like the electricity again. Like you can
Yes.
try to direct it in one way or another, but it's going to do whatever it wants to do. That's just life. And so if you're not so attached to things playing out how you expect them to or want them to, and you just let everything be the messy chaos that it is, because that's what life is. Humans are messy and chaotic, and all of us are. And it change, look, we're going to change day by day. So as soon as you, it's just taking down yes, hold boundaries, but you also have to completely vaporize all of the boundaries that you have confined yourself within, who you think you are, and the words and the aesthetics and the emotions and the labels that you've put on yourself to constrain yourself, and know that you are infinite potential energy, just as chaotic as the electricity through the wires. Boy.
And really check your expectations.
Hmm.
Because if you are looking for that fairy tale, if you're making this fairy tale up in your mind, how much are you setting yourself up for failure, right? And instead, how can you best set yourself up for success?
Mm.
And so that letting go of, expecting people to show up the way that you would, in a way that you
That's a hard one.
believe they should show up, right?
Hmm.
Like that's it's not possible. And not just that, but it keeps you stuck in an energy that just isn't useful for anyone. And
That
so
use
managing those expectations, yes.
I tell people all the time, it does not matter what is true and what is not. Find what is useful. Like if
Mm,
this quote unquote truth is useful or not useful. It doesn't matter if it's scientifically proven or whatever, whatever. I definitely lean more towards the woo-woo stuff because it helps with mental health and progress.
Yes.
It doesn't matter if it's true or not. Does that
Yes.
story help you? Does it help you move forward? Does it help you progress? Does it help you let go of the past? Does it help you with your mental state? Does it help you feel happier? Is it useful? It doesn't matter if it's true.
Oh, yes. I've had so many people like ask me, what about astrology? What about tarot? How do you feel about those? And I'm like, well, if it allows you to be able to use it and like the stories in a way that is useful to you, who am I to tell you it's wrong or it doesn't work or things like that? Like, if
Mm-hmm.
that allows you to let go of some expectations and maybe understand the psychology and the mental well-being of yourself in a way that you can actually utilize, okay, like I'm not going to tell you it's wrong because it's it again, like you said, useful. It great, fantastic. So whatever it is that you use, whatever it is you're drawn towards, go towards it, because that's going to allow you to show up how you want to in life. And that's what's going to make this world a better place, is people showing up in a way that they're actually proud of and not in a way that they think that they have to.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because we've been told all sorts of stories about how we're supposed to be showing up.
Yeah.
I think a lot of those, I think a lot of the breakdown we're seeing in our culture and society and stuff, though, is us coming to the realization that we don't have to fit into these standard boxes. Because, I don't know about you, but my generation, which I'm pretty sure we're in the same generation, but was told that there's an order that you do things. You graduate high school, top of your class if you can. I did not, and then you go to college, a good one if you can. I I went to college. It was just a regular community college, but you get the degree, and then you find a career, and then you just they had it all laid out for you, and that's how success was marketed to us.
Yes.
And come to find out, it was kind of a ploy.
Yep.
And
More than kind of.
more than kind of, uh but making our own way. You said something earlier about like the I'm trying to wrap this up. I promise I'm not trying to like steal all of your time today, but uh, when you're talking about you have to quit drinking, we're like, well, who said that you have to? So are you familiar with Alan Watts?
Yes,
Okay, everybody should be at this point. They're not,
I
but
agree.
he,
Like every time I listen to like clips or read something, it's like profound,
uh-huh.
profound. Yes.
He has this one thing where he's actually talking about suicide in this specific clip, but he also related it to every aspect of life, where he was talking about who said that you have to live. And like if you give somebody, like if somebody is suicidal and they come to you and they're like, I want to kill myself, then okay, if that's what makes you happy. And he's like, well, what do you mean if that's what I'm supposed to live? And he says, who says? Who says you're supposed to live? Who says? Who says that you have to? And they're like, well, when he's talking to people about being happiness and finding your happiness and making sure you're happy first and then letting everything else fall, like conform around that. And they're always like, well, I have to work, I have to put food on the table. Who says? Well, if I don't, I'll die. Okay, if that's what makes you happy. Well, I have to take care of my house and my kids. Who says? And I mean, like, yeah, there's some standards, and if you hold those standards, then great, as I feel we should, But at this end of the day, we're all completely different, and life is too short to be stuck just being another cog in the system of misery. If you just remove yourself from it and then start finding your own way, things have a way of surprising you the way they work out. And I mean, it's scary. It's sure scary. And I'm trying to condense a lot of information in a small period of time because we've already hit our hour and I know you want to go. So,
Well, you hit this really great point too of, when my wife brought divorce to me, and I was like, I get it because I knew that things weren't great. I knew there were fractures, but I did the things I was supposed to, right? I had the career. I was actually, I was a supervisor. I was moving up and I was really good at it. I had the vehicles, right? We both had fairly newer vehicles. They were nice. We had a house. We had two kids. We, we had checked all of these boxes that we were told, oh, you check all of these and you're living a great life
hmm
that you'll be happy with. And it's just, it wasn't. And why was that? Well, we weren't being true to ourselves.
hmm
Like there were things that we said in our relationship that we didn't adhere to. And so, of course, when it came to that head and looking at where things were, it was like, yeah, neither of us was showing up for ourselves. And so, how could we show up for one another, let alone our kids?
hmm
And when I started to show up how I wanted to show up, like there was a lot of stuff that fell away from my life, like friends, like, relationships with family members, relationships uh, with my ex-wife, like all of that really fell away. And it is scary as hell. But the friends that I have now are friendships that are stronger than the ones that I had prior. And those friendships were 20 plus years long.
hmm
They were from, preschool, a lot of them.
hmm
And realizing that, okay, I can surround myself with people who are, you know, supportive in a way that makes me feel like I get to show up as me and not in a way that makes me feel like I have to show up a certain way.
hmm
And then you leave some room for yourself to be surprised. Because, yes, maybe you tried something and it didn't work out how you wanted it to, but it made you feel like this is how I want to show up. Well, if you open yourself up, what's more than likely going to happen when you do that again? Well, it might be that first outcome. But if you open yourself up to be surprised a little bit, it allows that surprise to come in because you're actually open to receive that and see what that is. And now you might see something different this time than you did the first time. And it lets you actually be like, that's why I liked showing up in that way. And now you're living a life that like I said, you get to go to bed and wake up in the morning and look back and be like, wow, I'm proud of the way that I showed up. Wow, I'm doing this hard thing and I'm actually enjoying it.
hmm
I'm not dreading Mondays. I'm not dreading certain things. There might still be things that you're like, well, I really don't want to do that. Like, let's be honest, cleaning. I mean, come on. But when you do that, right, how do you feel afterwards? Like before and during, you might hate it. You're like, oh, this isn't in alignment with me. No, but how do you feel after it's done? Because that's really where the alignment might be found. It might not be found during, might not be found before. How does it feel afterwards? And that's where the checking in throughout the process allows you to enjoy that journey because it is about the journey and not the destination.
Yeah. You have to embrace the chaos of life, but with a sense of discipline.
Mm, yes. Yes, absolutely.
Which is something that martial arts teaches us and whatnot. I'm really into stuff like that as well. Uh, and Will Smith, when he and Jada were having their first set of public things, was talking about how it's not the we look to the partner in the relationship to make us happy. And that's not how things work. You have to go find your own happiness and go make yourself happy and then come meet me. And then that's what I got to go do. So you go do
Yeah.
that and I'm going to do the same thing. And then we're going to come together and if it's great and it's working, then it's great and it's working. And if it's not, then it's not personal. It's just a thing, you know? sometimes it aligns and everything clicks, and then sometimes it doesn't. But we want to get really attached to it being personal, and then we're attacking the other person, or we're feeling some type of way about ourselves because we weren't good enough, quote unquote, for the person, or whatever, whatever. Or, oh, they didn't work hard enough to keep me, or whatever, whatever. We could go on forever.
Yes. We could. And it's sorting through those stories, right? And finding the truth. And then again, asking yourself that question, like you so brilliantly asked earlier, is this useful?
Mm,
Is this truth useful? Because if it is a truth and it's not useful, why keep it?
yep. Okay. Well, we're gonna let everybody go now. Is there anything you want to plug? You have a podcast. If you enjoyed talking, listening to him talk, there's more.
Yeah. Go listen to Untapped Keg. You can find me on social media, Untapped Keg everywhere. And if you find yourself in a space where you want to quit drinking without focusing on drinking, go to untappedkeg.com and look and see maybe coaching is right for you. And just, yeah, go and listen and enjoy. There's so many useful nuggets like this conversation that we had today that is going to be found in a lot of that. So I appreciate you having me, Savannah.
Yeah. Uh, you are the untapped keg, if y'all didn't catch that.
Yes. Absolutely. And that is what it's all about. I had a friend say, you went from turning the power on to turning other people's power on. And it's like,
Yeah.
all right, yeah, and my own. So that that goes a long way. That's pretty cool. So
Absolutely.
embrace it.
Yes, yes, yes. All right. Wonderful, wonderful. I'll start talking now.